The recent trailer is for Palworld, a game that has been making waves in the gaming community recently. Referred to as a Pokemon clone, Palworld boasts a simple and bright graphic style as well as a storyline. But does everything live up to the hype? Let's join MG Horror Studio to find out the answer in today's video. Note: the video contains many details that will make your childhood memories more interesting. Please consider carefully before watching. Before delving into the analysis, let's have a brief understanding of the world and storyline of Palworld. Firstly, Palworld is a game without a storyline. Yes, you didn't hear it wrong. Palworld completely lacks a storyline. To be more precise, the developers have promised to update the storyline in the future, but at the current moment, it remains a typical survival shooter game with no linear plot or missions. The world in Palworld is not much different from Earth, featuring oceans, polar regions, and deserts. However, there's a distinctive aspect: the inhabitants of Palworld are not called animals but pals. Essentially, their appearance resembles that of Pokemon, with various species and different ecosystems depending on their habitats. Currently, there are a total of 137 pals with 9 different types in Palworld. Of course, pals also possess their unique abilities, similar to Pokemon. It's due to this resemblance that many people label Palworld as a Pokemon imitation. However, Palworld has something that Pokemon doesn't: the pals in the game are capable of wielding firearms and engaging in shootouts, unlike Pokemon. Just this aspect alone is enough to make Palworld more formidable. But that's not all. People consume pals, and even the pals themselves engage in cannibalistic behavior in the Pokemon world created by Nintendo. We are aware that the appearance of Pokemon is used to replace other animals like pigs, cows, goats, chickens, birds, etc. But if that's the case, do humans eat Pokemon and consider them a primary source of protein? Do Pokemon consume each other, or if not, what do they eat? Fundamentally, we've never witnessed scenes of characters eating Pokemon in the animated series. At most, there are instances like Ash and Brock imagining Magikarp hamburgers or Magikarp sashimi. In the games, this detail is also quite vague. We know that humans extract Miltank milk for children, use Chansey eggs instead of chicken eggs, or consider slowpoke tails as premium ingredients in Alolan stews. However, the Pokédex contains many details suggesting that humans would eat Pokemon if they taste good. For instance, Shuckle is noted to consume berries to survive, with the berries mixing with the fluids in Shuckle's body to create a delicious beverage. Appleton is recorded to have a body covered in honey, and children often view the skin on its back as a tasty snack. Naturally, if humans eat Pokemon, then Pokemon can also consume their own kind. Appleton, for example, uses the scent of honey on its body to attract insect-type Pokemon and eat them. Pidgeotto turns Caterpie into its own nutrition. Additionally, there are cases of Pokemon eating humans, such as Hypno consuming the energy from human dreams, or Kyurem, a legendary Pokemon rumored by the residents of Lacunosa Town to devour anyone it sees. In essence, Pokemon are similar to real-life animals in that they can eat their own kind, eat humans, and be eaten by humans. However, these details don't align with the target audience Nintendo aims for, so they are downplayed and avoided in both Pokemon games and movies. In Palworld, on the other hand, this detail is addressed quite explicitly, without hiding or sugarcoating. However, it's crucial to note that pals in Palworld are considered rare animals that need protection to some extent. Therefore, the developers acknowledge that if you kill a pal in this world, you will get a free meal in return. Consequently, after being attacked, pals don't die but rather become unconscious and temporarily weakened. However, this seems somewhat contradictory to the items in the game. We know that in survival games, eating is crucial for survival, and in Palworld, Once you reach level 12 and learn the butchery skill, you can use a meat cleaver to embark on the journey of harvesting your pals. However, this scene has been greatly minimized, and it's not very gory. You will only see the knife sharpening back and forth, then the pal disappears, and ingredients for cooking appear. For example, lamb is juicy lamb meat, chikipi is chicken thigh, broncherry is large-sized leg, or mammarist is a large piece of meat with green moss on top. These items all have the appearance of neatly cut fresh meat, much like pork or beef we see in stores. From a realistic standpoint, the idea of a pal producing meat without any harm is extremely illogical, especially considering the actions preceding it. Therefore, in Palworld, pals are still killed and turned into food, not much different from Pokemon. Palworld simply portrays this more explicitly than the somewhat veiled approach in Pokemon. While there are no scenes of skinning or cutting meat, looking at the neatly processed square pieces of meat turned into delicious and fragrant dishes, we can easily imagine what has happened, right? Again, if there's a scenario of humans eating pal meat, there's also the scenario of pals eating each other, and the evidence for this is more direct than humans eating pal meat. Taking Cognito as an example, a gamer named Lunar Gaming on YouTube accidentally witnessed Cognito eating another pal at night and recorded it as evidence, posting it on Reddit. Clearly, Cognito is not the only pal with this hobby. Many gamers confirm that Dire Howl and Leespunk in the game also exhibit similar behavior. Although the scenes in the game are cute and not gruesome, if you associate it with the image of vultures gnawing on a carcass or hungry wolves tearing apart other wolves, you will undoubtedly find it eerie and no longer be able to view the pal crowd normally. In reality, we still need to eat meat to survive, and in the world of Palworld, where only pals exist, the idea of us eating them or them eating each other is quite normal. Just imagine pals as close friends, beings with certain intelligence, understanding, and companionship throughout our journey suddenly becoming food reserves and being thrown into a pan one day. Would you find that terrifying? If so, that's the very reason why the game developers tried to express everything in the game in the gentlest way possible. Indeed, we are friends, whereas the pals are merely slaves in both Pokemon movies and games. We can see that Pokemon possess exceptional intelligence, sometimes even on par with or surpassing humans. Pokemon take on various roles for humans, such as Jigglypuff's ability to be a singer, even though it only sings lullabies each time. Chansey and Blissey fulfill the role of nurses in Pokemon centers, and Meowth can adapt to any profession. From this, it can be seen that the position of Pokemon in the Pokemon world is relatively equal to that of human friends and family members. Although they may be used as food, they still have the opportunity to find a job, receive a salary, bonuses, allowances, and various insurance types, even though this is not explicitly mentioned. However, in Palworld, everything is completely different. Pals in Palworld also possess superior intelligence because you can command them to do everything, from simple tasks to complex ones like forming a fire team, farming, crafting, irrigation, transportation, power supply, and/or mining. Listening to it might make these pal creatures seem very useful, but if you compare them to Pokemon, you will notice some details that are a bit off. Most of the tasks that Pokemon perform are related to their intelligence or light physical labor, suitable for their physique and abilities. However, the tasks pals perform are different. Most of what pals do depends on your requirements for them, even if you instruct a small and harmless-looking pal like Kativa to mine ore, it has to comply. At first glance, everything seems normal, and there's not much to say. After all, it's just a mechanism in the game. However, upon closer inspection, you will surely feel that it is darker than you initially thought. Let's first talk about the situation and what the pals have to endure. They do not have the option to choose the tasks they can do. It entirely depends on the player, and they have no ability to resist or refuse these tasks. The working hours and conditions for pals are far from ideal. They have to work until their energy is completely depleted before they are allowed to rest, and after their energy is restored, they have to continue working. The pals almost have no time for themselves or their families. They have to work like robots until they grow old and pass away due to exhaustion. Moreover, you can discard or consume pals when you want to clean up the warehouse or feel that they are unnecessary. However, pals do not have the right to discard their owners. Once captured, they are forced to obediently follow without the right to resist. In history, there was a period when humans had to work from dawn until dusk. They had to perform all kinds of tasks, from the lightest to the most strenuous, with no days off, no wages, no citizenship rights, and no future. Those people were called slaves. How brutal the slave system was, I think you can understand. In recorded history, slaves were not even considered human. They were treated as commodities owned by their masters. In the eyes of their masters, they were even inferior to cattle or buffalo, and their masters could take their lives at any time. If we put it on the scale, you will realize that pals are no different from slaves. You go find them, knock them unconscious, take them out of their natural environment, and start training them by forcing them to work day and night, fighting against their own kind. It may sound normal, but imagine the scene where slaves have to risk their lives in arenas, in a gruesome setting that I won't describe, and they can be killed anytime. Do you feel any difference between those pals in the game and the slaves? The only difference here is perhaps the cute and adorable images in the game that successfully make you forget that terrible reality. Ironically, the term pal used to refer to those animals implies friends. You might think that the producers named them as if to imply that pals are friends of humans, but I think differently. Look at the scenes shown in the trailer by the producers. You can see images of pals sitting on production lines working day and night and mining like machines, completely contrary to the words beautiful, adorable, or friends that Palworld wants to convey. So, I think the term pal is a way for the producers to mock. As for the target of this mockery, I think you've already figured it out. Making a small comparison, Pokemon in animated movies and games also has some similarities to pals. They are taken out of their natural environment, tamed, and serve the competitive or collecting purposes of children. Pokemon trapped inside a small sphere, and a child can own dozens or even hundreds of such spheres. You know, in ancient times, kings didn't visit every corner of the harem. So, those Pokemon that are less loved or paid less attention to will be trapped in Pokemon balls almost forever, not knowing when they can see the sunlight. However, to cover up that cruel truth, Nintendo has cleverly concealed everything with familiar images between Pokemon and humans. So, when we look at it, we might think that Pokemon has the right to live and democratic rights like pals. But in reality, both species are no different. Both have their freedom taken away, conquered by some mysterious being and turned into slaves, serving their personal interests. The only difference is that Pokemon hides it behind other beautiful things, while Palworld exposes everything right in front of us. Duplicating and breeding for greater benefits? Continuing with Pal, in addition to forcing them to work, you can also have them mate to create a stronger offspring. This is basically similar to how humans breed new animal species, but you know, nature's laws are not there to showcase. Mating across species leads to various genetic differences and consequences. For example, have you ever seen a product of a cat mating with a dog? Or a fish with a duck? Absolutely not, because mating across species does not result in viable offspring due to genetic differences. Only in cases of closely related species, like lions and tigers, or horses, donkeys, and zebras, can they produce offspring, but their offspring, well, isn't very pleasant. So, you can see that in real life, we usually pair and mate within the same species, dogs with dogs, cats with cats, humans with humans, except for some with peculiar tastes. But in Palworld, the term species is just a noun. As long as it's called Pal, they can mate and produce offspring. With this breeding system, Mendon finds it rather like a resurrection ceremony. Let's take an example of breeding in Palworld. If you let Direhowl mate with Gummis, you'll get Moraith. Pyron mating with Catress results in Pyron knocked, Lylene with Menasting gives you Lylene knocked, and so on. Sounds interesting, right? Breeding different pals to create a new species is quite entertaining, and since it's a game, nothing really important. But, try to imagine mating two pals of different species. It's somewhat similar to having a circus ringmaster mate with a pig in the Black Mirror episode. If you've seen that episode, you probably understand what I'm hinting at. Not to mention that after giving birth, their offspring doesn't belong to them but to the player. And as a common practice, we'll raise their offspring, force them to work at any hour, and then let them continue to mate, give birth, and the cycle repeats. The offspring of the slaves will have to continue being slaves. Imagine how terrible it would be if you put yourself in their shoes. Have sex with animals and the story of the hashtag bestiality, and yeah, this is probably the thing that you guys are most curious about and also interested in. Now, let's be honest with each other. Have you guys ever watched those are 34 human and Pokemon things? Have you ever tried looking at Pokemon like Ninetales, Primarina, and Gardevoir and had unusual thoughts? Surely not less than once, right? Because the number of keywords on Black Cat websites says it all. However, it is regrettable to state that most of them are transsexual. Not to mention, they are just beautiful, but doing business is bad luck. Furthermore, the developers of the movies and games never intended to make them sexy, actually a little bit, but not so much that people would have dark fantasies, because furry and circus animals are still one of the keywords targeted by PETA. But no matter what Pokemon doesn't exist, Palworld strongly declares that we will fight. So as you can see, in Palworld there are not only normal pals, but also extremely sexy pals, literally, not what you imagine. Typical of the PAL group is Lavender. Lavender's appearance can be said to be extremely sexy and seductive with long pink hair, large breasts, big hips, slim waist, and chubby thighs. Not to mention, the place that everyone knows is a place that is normally intentionally hidden by game makers, but now appears openly with an undeniably sexy heart-shaped sticker. According to the Paldeck Encyclopedia, a Pokédex knockoff, Lavender is a bipedal salamander that often goes out at night to find a mate. But instead of having a certain target, this group of people eat everything from big to small, from chili peppers to bitter melon and eggplant. Initially, this focus was mainly on other pals, but as the number of birds in the Red Book increased, they began to shift their attacks to humans. That's right, if in Pokemon, Nintendo avoided mentioning this issue, then in Palworld, the developer did not hesitate to write it into Paldeck, even emphasizing that these groups go looking for friends at night. But when you look for friends at night, you only have your partner in bed, and there's no love left here. Not to mention Lavender's attacks are really difficult to describe. If you have ever encountered Lavender, then I am sure you know what I am referring to. The way it attacks the player, or uses extremely sexy and descriptive skills, I'm understating it. It's so sensitive that just by looking at Lavender, you'll come up with 7,749 helpless coach scenarios in your head. So, I'm really skeptical. Is Palworld intentionally creating a Pokemon like that to create a highlight? Or a fun way to popularize the hashtag bestiality hashtag? If they had such intentions, they would have truly succeeded. From there, it can be seen that if Pokemon doesn't dare to do anything, Palworld will have that. They are not afraid to expose all the dark sides and inappropriate thoughts of the Pokemon world in front of everyone. As a result, Nintendo sued for copyright infringement and Pokemon imitation. In general, there's nothing you can do about being spicy, especially when Palworld is as hot as it is right now. I don't know where things will go, but in the future, if the game maker updates the plot of Palworld, I bet you, everything will not be as beautiful, lovely, and lifeless as it appears. Where? In the end, the above is all my gossip, so I'm just making it up. You guys listen to it for fun. If you don't like it, just listen to it again until it's fun. I was angry before you guys gave me hate. And those are the hypotheses from MG Horror Studio about the game Palworld. What do you think about this video? If you like my video, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we'll meet again in other videos. For now, goodbye and see you in the next videos. Bye bye.